So the other day, I was Uber driving, and I picked up this guy who needed a quick ride. It was like 5, 10 minutes. And in the process of having a conversation with him, he starts talking about what he believes in terms of like the names of God and all of this. And so it goes into this whole idea of the sort of like a Hebrew Israelite sort of take, uh, basically going into like the name of God being this particular name or that particular name, and all these other names that we know in English are incorrect and wrong. Um, and so it was just weird. Uh, Not necessarily that I haven't dealt with that. Like I've had plenty of interesting conversations with people like that. However, I didn't have enough time to really get into the details, even though I wanted to. But it was interesting to me that it's immediately like anything that's English is done away with, and we now all of a sudden have the correct pronunciation of God's name. And when you go and look at like the etymology of how Hebrew came about and stuff like that, we don't find that in history. And then there's all of this other stuff that goes along with it, like the denial of the Trinity, and that God's name is this particular way, and if you have it wrong, you are outrightly wrong. And it's interesting to me that when you look at the historical narrative, going back to even the first century, you don't find these particular items being discussed in the history, especially like church fathers. They don't have any mention of it, of pronouncing God's name a particular way. And you look at the rabbis, and they don't necessarily have this conversation either. And these are historical rabbis who wouldn't necessarily have any reason to hide such a discussion. And so it's just interesting to me that there are people out there who say these things, but yet when you look at the historical narrative going all the way back to the first century, there's nothing of it. And it becomes divisive in that now we're saying that God has been hiding something from us and hasn't put it in plain sight. Now, if that were the case, that means God's not really just in what he's doing. Like he gave us the Bible, but the letters of whatever language that you're reading the Bible in terms of like Hebrew or Greek, those letters have a particular meaning, and what's behind those letters is actually correct. Or the meaning of those letters is what the message actually is. And that goes into what I would call Gnosticism, and that is considered a first century heresy. But that's a different thing altogether. But in the same stream, this is what happens in a lot of those thought processes where people take a particular genre, like a Hebrew type of thought process, and then all of a sudden they twist it and contort it so that it fits a particular worldview, and say that this is the correct way. And so we now have the right way and everybody else has the wrong way. And so that technically is Gnosticism in a nutshell. And that causes a lot of problems in terms of your theological alignment. Anyways, that's my 2 cents, and the conversation was very interesting. It went from me asking him what he did to all of a sudden he's spouting off all this stuff. So, anyways, that's it. Give me a holler back if you have any thoughts. Thanks. Bye.